Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. A former Marine seeks peace in a remote mountain home until a power-hungry HOA president targets him in a twisted campaign of control, lies, and sabotage. But she picked the wrong man to intimidate. And the mountain has its own rules. I moved back to Fairview County in early fall when the aspens were just starting to turn yellow along the ridgelines. My name is Caleb Holden, 33 years old, former Marine Corps security contractor, and now a man who wanted quiet more than anything. After years of bouncing between overseas contracts, I'd had enough of checkpoints, pay disputes, and sleeping with my boots on. I wanted a place where I could hear coyotes instead of mortar drills. So when an old mountain house on 6 acres went up for sale just outside Silver Pine Reserve, I didn't hesitate. It was a 2-story wood-framed home with a slanted metal roof, a wide porch, and a view that made you forget how many stupid things humans get worked up over. I rebuilt the front gate on my first day, reinforced it with steel hardware that would make most crowbars cry, and lined the fence line with motion-activated lights. Not because I was paranoid, but because out here, wildlife has no respect for boundaries, and I prefer not to meet a black bear on my porch at midnight. The nearest neighborhood was upscale, prim, and looked as if it had been built out of brochures, big cabins pretending to be rustic. The sign at its entrance introduced it like a gated country club. Welcome to Silver Pine Reserve, managed by the Silver Pine HOA. The houses were perfect, too perfect, like someone ironed them. They shared one rule: beauty through conformity. People lived there the way taxidermy animals live, lovely to look at, dead on the inside. On my third day, I was tightening new bolts on the gate when a white Lexus rolled up, slow like it owned the road. The door popped open, and out stepped a woman dressed like winter itself was beneath her. She wore a cream-colored coat, pearl earrings, and a facial expression that suggested she had never stood in the rain a day in her life. She walked right up without introducing herself and started taking photos of my porch, the gate, even the truck parked in my drive. "Excuse me," I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Something wrong with your phone? Because I can get you a charger to zoom in properly." She didn't laugh. People like her rarely do. They consider humor an act beneath leadership. She slid a finger across the screen of her tablet and turned it toward me. "Your fencing doesn't conform to our community aesthetic guidelines." "Our," I repeated. "I don't remember buying into a country club. Silver Pine Reserve requires architectural approval for renovations, paint, exterior materials, and property access structures," she recited like she was reading off a holy script. "We'll need to schedule a review." I leaned against my rebuilt gate. "No need. I'm not part of Silver Pine." The way she smiled made me think I'd just answered incorrectly on a test I hadn't realized I was taking. "Oh, you'll find our processes apply to all residents in the vicinity. You really should read your covenant agreement." "Didn't sign one," I replied. "Never received one. And I don't live in your HOA." She blinked once, as if offended that reality dared disagree with her opinion. "I'm Karen Brockwell, president of the Silver Pine HOA. I'm responsible for maintaining order and value in this region. You'll understand as you settle in. We can't just have anyone building whatever they want." "I built a fence," I said. "Not a nuclear submarine." She ignored the comment and wrote something down with unnecessary aggression. "We'll be in touch. There are rules here, expectations, and it's best for everyone to cooperate. As long as those expectations don't involve my property," I said calmly. She lifted her chin the way a person does when they run out of facts but not confidence. "You'll learn. Some houses here have been referenced legally as part of Silver Pine territory, even if they aren't physically within the gates. We maintain standards. We make things better." "I'll make you a deal," I replied. "You respect my property lines, and I'll respect the fact that you care deeply about fences." Her expression tightened. She snapped one final photo of my porch as if she expected to find contraband siding. Then she returned to the Lexus without saying goodbye. As she drove off, I heard gravel ping the underside of her car as if the earth itself had decided to greet her. A few minutes later, a neighbor from across the road, an older man in a flannel jacket, walked by and muttered just loud enough, "Careful with that one. She forced a family out last year, claimed their porch violated aesthetics. House was on sale under her committee authority a month later." I raised an eyebrow. How'd she manage that? He just shook his head. That woman thinks she runs the mountains. Don't let her start. I'm not planning on it, I said. He snorted. People don't plan it. She insists on it. He walked on, and I looked back at my house. Quiet, sturdy mine. Then, without meaning to, I smiled. If there was one thing I learned overseas, it was that the hardest fights are the ones people don't realize they've already picked. And Karen, whether she knew it or not, had just declared a small, stupid war over a fence. The first few days after my gate inspection were quiet, and I started thinking maybe Karen had realized she'd wasted her time. That illusion lasted exactly 5 days. Early morning, around 8, I heard footsteps on gravel, too heavy to be deer, too slow to be someone jogging. When I stepped outside, a man in khaki pants and a windbreaker with consultant printed on a cheap plastic badge was standing on my property, pointing a digital measuring device at a patch of dirt near the side of my house. He didn't look at me as I approached, which already told me everything about him. Guys like that only look at you after they think they've already claimed the ground you're standing on. Something I can help you with? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. My neutral voice apparently still startled him. He jumped and fumbled his clipboard. Landscaping assessment, he said. Silver Pine HOA requested a soil erosion evaluation. Did they also request you trespass? I nodded toward the sign at the edge of my driveway. No trespassing. You walk past it or teleport over it. His mouth opened and closed like a trout dropped on a dock. They said you were part of the community territory. I'm not. I was told. You were told wrong, so let's try something new. You leave. The man seemed torn between fear and his paycheck. I helped him decide by taking a photo of his badge and his car plate. That's not necessary, he sputtered. Too late. Now it's documented. He muttered something about misunderstanding and walked briskly back to his Subaru, nearly tripping over his own dignity on the way out. I hadn't even brewed coffee when a UPS driver dropped off a thick envelope addressed from Silver Pine Community Office. I opened it right there on the porch. It was a formal notice accusing my fence and gate of violating regional standards, demanding I remove or alter them within 30 days to avoid community fines. The letter was aggressive enough to think it belonged to a court clerk, not some committee of retired petty tyrants. The cherry on top, it claimed I had already been notified of these conditions and was non-compliant. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was desperate. Someone who believes they own you will always act like you've broken a rule you never agreed to. I scanned the document, saved a digital copy, and typed a short reply to Silver Pine HOA. I am not a member, residentially or contractually, of your association. You have no authority over my property. Any future attempts to enforce HOA guidelines on me or deploy representatives onto my land will result in legal action for harassment and trespassing. Respectfully, Caleb Holden. I hit send. That afternoon, as I climbed a ladder to install my new security cameras, a black pickup with a magnetic crest reading HOA Security Patrol rolled up to my driveway. 2 men in identical gray jackets stepped out. Not cops, but the kind of rent-a-guard who thinks a badge automatically grows a spine. One of them looked up at the camera in my hands. Recording of community space requires authorization from the HOA. It's my property. You're facing our neighborhood. You built your neighborhood facing me. That's your problem. He squared his shoulders like he expected me to crumble under his stern HOA authority. If you continue installing surveillance, we'll file for violation of privacy laws. I turned the screwdriver slowly, finished tightening the mount, then hopped down to look him in the eyes. Listen carefully. This is the last time I'm going to be polite. If you step onto my land again for anything other than delivering a package, I'll call the sheriff. The man scoffed. Do you think that scares anyone around here? I smiled slightly. I don't care if it scares you. I care that it applies to you. They exchanged a glance. Confused, irritated, then left. The whole interaction smelled like insecurity, marinated in entitlement. That evening, I drove into town for supplies. While I was getting wire clamps at the hardware store, I called my father. Hey, Dad, remember that time in middle school when Principal Jeffers tried to suspend me because his kid lied? There was a pause. What did you do now? Nothing. Someone else is trying the same approach. Another pause, heavier. HOA trouble. Think they want to control the whole county. He sighed, a long, veteran sheriff sigh. Don't pick a fight. Let them cross the line first. They're sprinting toward it. Good. Document everything. The law works best when the idiots provide the evidence themselves. Anything else? I asked. Yeah, he said. If they think you'll fold, they're stupid. If they find out you're my son, they're screwed. Let's see which comes first. After I got home, I checked the footage from the new camera. The night setting picked up every shadow and corner clearly, including the dark silhouette of a woman creeping near the tree line, taking pictures of my windows. Whoever she wasn't a deer, and she wasn't lost. The third week after moving in, I finally started sleeping through the night again, or at least until 2:48 in the morning. That's when the alert came through my phone, a quiet buzz against the nightstand that jolted me awake faster than any alarm. I wasn't half asleep either. Years of overseas work will do that to you. I checked the screen. Motion detected. Back entrance. The snapshot showed a blurry figure hunched over my rear door, right at the lock. The person wasn't rummaging or knocking. They were working the handle with both hands. That's not curiosity. That's technique. I slipped quietly from bed. No noise, no frustration, just focus. The cameras were set to trigger an automated sequence if someone lingered near the door more than 30 seconds. They'd already hit second 28. I didn't grab a weapon. I didn't need one. The house was reinforced, cameras rolling, and I knew nobody could open that lock without a tank key. I just watched the countdown on the tablet like someone watching a fuse burn. Right on cue, at second 30, the floodlight on the roof snapped on and lit my backyard like a baseball field. The stranger jerked back, tripped over the deck step, and a metallic clink hit the wooden boards. The camera caught the whole thing clean. Small frame, hood, dark jacket, backpack, maybe 5'4". The person scrambled to their feet, grabbed nothing. Whatever they dropped was still on the deck, and sprinted down the yard, fast and panicked. I didn't chase. The camera was doing the job better than any confrontation. 5 minutes later, the night turned neon red and blue. A patrol car screeched up my drive like they were chasing a murderer. Another cruiser followed seconds behind. I stepped outside before they knocked down my front door. 2 officers jumped out, one with his hand hovering near his holster. "Hands where we can see them," he shouted. I raised my hands, not annoyed, just precise. "Easy. I live here." Dispatch received a 911 call, the second officer barked. Female caller reported a home invasion in progress. Armed suspect inside. I blinked once. That's interesting. I'm the one who got the intruder. The first officer hesitated, glancing at the door. The lights, the lack of broken windows. Are you saying no one broke in? I'm saying someone tried, and I've got the video. I gestured to the porch. Come see for yourself. Inside, I pulled up the footage on the largest screen. One benefit of working security consulting was that I had gear. Most homes don't. The clip played, lock tampering, the fall, the scramble. The officers leaned in, watching closely. When the stranger ran into the tree line, the timestamp froze at the exact moment the floodlight triggered. The taller officer exhaled slowly. Well, that's very different from the call we got. Who reported it? I asked, though I already suspected. He clicked a few buttons on his mobile terminal. Caller ID. Karen Brockwell. She really had no imagination. Did she describe the intruder? I asked, more to confirm my suspicion than anything else. The shorter officer nodded, said a dangerous male armed with a knife forced entry into your home, possibly holding someone hostage. I actually laughed. Not loud, just a quick exhale of disbelief. That's creative and completely wrong. Did you see anyone with a knife? The officer asked. In the footage, they barely held onto a lockpick. Another pause. Longer this time. Police silence isn't awkward. It's evaluative. They were piecing together what I'd already concluded. Someone tried to break into my home. That same someone called 911, claiming there was a man inside, possibly violent. That someone has shown up at my property uninvited before. And she had a name. The taller officer cleared his throat. We're going to collect the footage as evidence. Did the intruder drop anything? Yeah, I said. Right about here. I grabbed a glove from the drawer and stepped onto the back deck. The tool lay near the step. A slim metal lockpick with a tension wrench attached. Not something your average suburban jogger carries on a late-night stroll. The officers sealed it into an evidence bag. One of them glanced at me again, suddenly curious. Your last name's Holden. Any relation to Sheriff Holden? My father, I said simply. I didn't add anything. I didn't need to. They exchanged a look, a different one this time. Not fear, respect mixed with the sudden realization that this wasn't a prank gone wrong. It was a serious mistake made against the wrong property. "We'll file this immediately," the officer said, his tone now careful, professional. "I'll note the false report as well." They drove away slower than they arrived, processing the situation. I remained on the porch a minute longer, breathing mountain air that suddenly felt colder than usual. Not because I was afraid. I wasn't. I'd spent too long around real danger to be rattled by amateur burglary. What bothered me was the deliberate lie. Whoever was behind it expected the police to treat me like the criminal. And that meant they weren't done. The morning after the police visit, I woke up to something I hadn't expected. Silence. Not calm silence. Thick, waiting silence. Like the air before a storm. Even the birds outside seemed hesitant. Sunlight spilled across my kitchen table where my phone buzzed non-stop with notifications from neighbors I didn't even know yet. I was about to ignore them when one message caught my eye. It came from an email list titled Silver Pine Safety Bulletin. Someone had added me without permission. I opened it and immediately understood why. Community alert, possible criminal activity nearby. A suspicious individual with a concerning past has been observed monitoring homes and residents. Avoid contact, keep doors locked. HOA is investigating. Stay vigilant. Attached was a grainy, zoomed-in photo of me standing at my own gate, tools in hand, looking like a contractor who forgot his coffee. The caption, potentially connected to local theft reports. I almost laughed, but the humor tasted bitter. This wasn't stupidity anymore. It was strategy. Less than an hour later, 2 county officers knocked on my door. Not emergency, just official. One of them looked like he'd rather be anywhere but here. The other kept adjusting his belt like it was choking him. "Mr. Holden," the nervous one began, "we received a theft report from a resident of Silver Pine. She claims heirloom jewelry went missing after you interacted with her on your property." I stared at them for a moment. "She's accusing me of stealing from her? She says a sapphire necklace and ring disappeared shortly after speaking with you last week. At my gate, outdoors." "Yes, sir." "When she trespassed?" "Yes, sir." "And she claims I robbed her while I was standing behind a fence holding a socket wrench." They didn't answer. They didn't have to. I stepped aside and let them in. "Gentlemen, if I ever turn to crime, I promise you it'll be more profitable than stealing old lady jewelry through a wooden fence." The officer, trying not to laugh, coughed into his sleeve like he'd inhaled dust. The nervous one regained his composure. "We do need to make a formal note and ask if you'll answer a few questions." "Absolutely," I replied. "Let me show you something first." I loaded last night's footage again, this time adding the timestamp and audio metadata for them to document. They watched quietly, their eyes narrowing as the lockpick flashed under the spotlight. The fall, the panic. When the video ended, I broke the silence. "Check the call timestamp. Compare it with the moment that tool hit my deck." The nervous officer's jaw clenched. False emergency report during an attempted break-in, and then a theft accusation the next morning. "Same caller," I said. "You're sure?" "I have a good memory for people who photograph my porch without consent." They finished their questions and promised to escalate the situation. But I knew cops. They weren't dismissing me. They were weighing probable cause, warrants, paperwork, jurisdiction. The wheels of law grind slow unless someone gives them a push. And someone had just offered them one. Before noon, another email came from an unknown address. No greeting, just a forwarded attachment. It was a screenshot of the same HOA warning with a quick message beneath. "Be careful, she's done this before. You didn't hear it from me." Anonymous, no signature, no name, but someone in Silver Pine was starting to crack. By afternoon, I drove into the sheriff's department myself. I asked for my father, but before I even reached his office, he opened the door and motioned me in like he'd been expecting me. He stood behind his desk with arms crossed, eyes hard but not surprised. I laid everything out, the break-in, the false report, the accusation, the email campaign. He listened without interrupting, the way soldiers listen to artillery, calculating distance, direction, and impact. When I finished, he leaned forward. "I'm taking this as a coordinated act. That's criminal harassment, potential attempted burglary, and deliberate misuse of emergency services. The theft accusation," he shook his head slowly. "That's an old trick. You discredit the target before they have a chance to defend themselves. She's trying to build motive on paper." "So what now?" I asked. He reached into a drawer and pulled out 2 forms, one for filing a civil notice, one for initiating criminal complaint documentation. He slid them across the desk. "We build a case. She crossed the line. Now she's going to find out where the line goes." As I signed, he added one more thing, almost casually, like someone setting a bear trap in the woods. "Don't confront her. Don't speak to her directly. Let her keep talking. The more she says, the easier she falls." Before I left, he nodded at me with an expression halfway between pride and warning. "People like her think power is ownership. Let her keep believing that. It'll make the landing harder." On the drive back, I passed the Silver Pine entrance sign again. The placid little street behind it looked quiet and serene, like nothing rotten had ever happened there. I'd seen war zones look peaceful before a firefight, too. By the end of that week, the investigation wasn't a rumor anymore. It had teeth. I got a call from a detective in the county task unit, a guy named Archer whom I'd met once at a sheriff's barbecue. Voice like gravel, manners like a sledgehammer wrapped in paperwork. "We need you at the station," he said. "We've got something you'll want to see." When I arrived, Archer didn't waste a second. He slapped a small evidence bag on the metal desk, the lockpick recovered from my porch. "Partial prints," he said. "We can match the full set if we get a warrant." I nodded. "You think it's Karen?" Archer raised an eyebrow. "I don't think. I know. But we need to make it official." He walked me through the timeline. Emergency call precisely 5 minutes after the attempted break-in, description matching a fake scenario, and the kicker, video metadata proving no one but the intruder was on the premise until police arrived. False emergency report, deliberate misuse to create probable cause against me. "Now we wait for the judge to approve our warrant," Archer said, leaning back. While we were talking, an officer hurried into the room and whispered something to him. Archer straightened, eyebrows lifting. "Well, that was fast." A few minutes later, I found out why. A pawn shop in town had reported a suspicious attempt to sell sapphire jewelry, high-end pieces. The seller? Not Karen herself, but a woman seen meeting her shortly before entering the shop. They checked the camera, and there she was. Karen, handing off a velvet pouch to the woman on the sidewalk, pretending like she was passing a grocery list. The shop's security footage caught Karen in perfect clarity. Archer played the clip on a small tablet. Karen's expression was calm, entitled, the look of someone who truly believed the world existed to validate her. She motioned to the other woman like a boss, telling a minion how to deliver lunch. The woman went inside, tried to pawn the necklace and ring, then bolted when they started scanning for ID. 2 minutes later, another camera caught Karen's car speeding out of the parking lot. I couldn't help myself. She really sucks at crime. Archer smirked, the kind of smile you see from a fisherman who knows the hook is set. People like her don't think they're criminals. They think they're right. Next step, the warrant passed within hours. The sheriff's department confiscated Karen's phone. Forensics pulled the data, and the GPS records placed her near my backyard at exactly the time of the attempted break-in. If she'd turned her phone off, this might have been harder, but narcissists rarely hide proof. They think they're untouchable. Another discovery. Deleted messages. Karen had ordered 2 HOA members to document the suspicious activity from the house across the street. She suggested that they observe any potential behaviors of theft and gather witness impressions beforehand. Translation: gather fake witnesses. There were also drafted messages, never sent, complaining that I had dangerous connections and that she was protecting the community from a hostile individual. One of the drafts even said, "The sheriff must step aside if he is personally compromised." That one almost made me laugh. She really believed she could push my father out of his job if she framed me hard enough. She wasn't just controlling, she was building a fantasy where she played judge, jury, and county executioner. The investigators reached out to HOA board members. Some refused to speak. Others crackled like dry branches under a boot. 3 agreed to testify anonymously in exchange for immunity from charges. They admitted that Karen pressured them to file complaints, sign warning letters, and circulate the email bulletin targeting me. They knew it was exaggerated, maybe false, but Karen promised she could remove problems legally through liens and civil enforcement. One board member, a jittery man in a sweater vest, apparently spilled everything. The plan was to create a reputation of theft around me, trigger a forced investigation, then push through a community safety injunction preventing me from living on my own property. She'd even discussed eventual foreclosure if fines are unpaid due to violations. She was planning to take my house, not influence it, not fix it, take it. Archer looked at me across the table. She was going to build a case against you, then seize your property through civil leverage. Seen that trick before with corrupt HOAs. Rarely so sloppy. Sloppy or not, it was dangerous. Someone who thinks they're the law is worse than someone who breaks it. Criminals know they're criminals. Karen thought she was the hero. As I walked out of the station, my father was waiting in the hallway, arms folded. "It's moving quickly," he said. "Faster than I expected," he nodded. "These things move faster when the person digs their own hole." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Karen had been digging from day one. All we had to do now was let gravity do the rest. The following days didn't feel like a neighborhood dispute anymore. HOA meetings were no longer about flowers, lawn lengths, or driveway stains. They turned into whispered huddles in driveways, closed garage doors, and board members refusing to make eye contact when they passed the sheriff's station. You could practically hear the walls creak from the pressure. Whatever Karen had built over the years, fear, loyalty, manipulation, was collapsing plank by plank. Late one morning, as I was patching a section of siding on the north wall, a silver sedan rolled up to my driveway. Not the usual entitled Lexus. This one moved slowly, almost apologetically. The passenger window rolled down and a woman in a green sweater leaned out, wearing sunglasses like she hoped they made her invisible. I recognized her from one of the HOA patrol pickups. "We need to talk," she said quietly, eyes scanning the road as if the trees might be wired. Her voice sounded like someone trying to evacuate a sinking ship without alerting the captain. I set down my toolbox. "If you're here to enforce shrub height, I'm going to disappoint you." She shook her head. I heard about the pawn shop and the phone records." Her voice wobbled. "We didn't know she'd go that far. We thought she was just tough about regulations." "Threatening people with foreclosure isn't a garden hobby," I said. Her hands tightened on the wheel. "She told us you were dangerous. She said you had a criminal background from overseas, and she needed our cooperation to protect the community. She told us to sign everything, just in case you did something violent later, so there'd be proof." Classic tactic. Don't just accuse someone, prepare the evidence in advance. "Why come to me?" I asked. She swallowed. "Because she knows. She knows the police found the jewelry. She's angry. She's calling emergency meetings. She says the board betrayed her. And she said she's suing you. Personally. And the sheriff's department. She said the department is corrupt because of favoritism." There it was. The last card in her deck. Attack the institution itself. When you can't win the game, you flip the table. Before I could respond, she added one last thing. 3 board members contacted the county prosecutor separately. They're cooperating. The prosecutor promised immunity for honest statements. She's panicking. If you go anywhere near her, she'll accuse you of intimidation. So, don't give her anything. I nodded slowly. Good advice. She nodded back, almost relieved to be free from delivering the message, then drove off like someone fleeing a confession booth. An hour later, I heard the rumble of government wheels. 2 unmarked SUVs and a county car headed toward Silver Pine. Search warrants don't arrive politely. They echo. I didn't see the raid, but anyone within a mile knew it was happening. Loud voices, engines, the hum of radios, the echo of a battering ram on a doorframe. Not because it was necessary, but because sometimes law enforcement doesn't trust locks anymore. The quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It was stunned. By evening, HOA members were pacing their manicured driveways, clinging to coffee mugs like life rafts. A man I'd never met before stopped on the road near my fence and stared at my property as if seeing it for the first time. "She said you were aggressive," he muttered to himself. "She said you wanted control." I didn't answer. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to the version of me Karen invented. My father called at dusk. Warrants executed. Devices seized. She tried to block entry by claiming private authority. I nearly choked. She tried to deny a search warrant. She told deputies they needed HOA consent, then tried to close the door. I couldn't help it. I laughed, and it wasn't polite. Did she at least ask them to submit a landscaping request? Dad exhaled slowly. She's doubling down. She's telling her lawyer that the HOA is a sovereign entity. She's insisting it outranks county jurisdiction. That was beyond delusional. That was patriotic insanity. What now? I asked. We wait, he said. We already have everything we need. The prosecutor wants to make it airtight before any charges are filed. We hung up, and I stood on the porch for a long moment, letting the evening cold settle. Coyotes screeched in the distance. Wind scraped through the pines. Somewhere inside Silver Pine Reserve, a woman was realizing her kingdom was smaller than she believed, and the borders didn't end where she thought. She wanted control. She demanded obedience. She tried to play sheriff. Now the real law was watching her drown in the authority she pretended to own. And the worst part for her? She was the one who turned the floodlight on. Saturday afternoon, right when the air smelled like rain and burnt pine needles, Silver Pine HOA held an emergency assembly. I knew because they printed leaflets and stuffed every mailbox within half a mile, including mine. The paper read, "Community Defense Meeting Against Defamation and Police Abuse." There was even a bold header claiming, "Protect our rights from unfair law enforcement." The irony hit harder than a beer bottle in a bar fight. I didn't plan to go, but I didn't need to. Half the neighborhood drove past my road anyway, dressed in their best concerned citizen outfits, sweaters, hiking jackets, expensive casual shoes that had never seen real dirt. They gathered under the pavilion near the HOA office, where banners declaring things like integrity, standards, and community authority hung like propaganda posters. The only thing missing was Karen handing out uniforms. She stood on a makeshift platform, same cream coat, same pearls, same confidence that refused to die even after being hit by a legal freight train. She looked like a queen stripped of her crown, but still convinced the peasants would kneel. A microphone squealed as she gripped it with trembling fingers. "They are weaponizing the police," she announced, voice shaking in that way politicians envy, half outrage, half victimhood. "They are betraying our safety for personal interests. We must fight back against this attack on our rights," the crowd murmured, unsure whether to clap, gasp, or look for exits. Some glanced nervously at the sheriff's station across town, as if it could hear them. Karen pressed harder. "They have fabricated evidence, invaded our privacy, and targeted us simply for defending our homes. We must stand together before—" She didn't finish. The pavilion lights flickered as a shadow filled the entrance. People shifted aside like a tide pulled back by gravity itself. My father walked in, not in jeans, not off-duty, full uniform, polished boots, badge gleaming under gray sky. 2 deputies followed him like bookends of inevitability. You could feel the shift in the crowd, the way a room realizes it's not an audience, but a witness. Karen froze, then raised her chin. "What are you doing here? This is a private HOA event. You have no jurisdiction unless we give consent." Dad didn't even blink. "That's not how the law works, Mrs. Brockwell." "You can't enter without permission," she snapped. He stepped fully onto the platform area, boots hitting the wood with enough weight to quiet every whisper. "Karen Brockwell," he said, projecting his voice with the calm of someone who's said those words too many times in too many worse places, "you are under arrest." The crowd went silent. No outrage, just shock, like they'd been slapped with reality. "For what?" she shrieked, clutching her microphone like it could save her. "False emergency report to law enforcement, attempted burglary, filing fraudulent accusations, harassment, conspiracy to falsify evidence, obstruction of justice." She stared, shaking her head violently. "Lies, all lies. I am protecting this community." "You endanger it," my father replied flatly. She lunged for her phone as if calling someone would erase the charges. Dad nodded to one deputy, who gently but firmly took her wrist. She started screaming, not crying, not pleading, screaming like an animal that had been caught in its own trap. "You can't do this. I am the authority here. I own this community. I own the rules." "And the law owns you," my father said. The handcuffs clicked. The sound carried farther than her shouting. As they led her down the steps, some residents recoiled, others stepped back in disbelief, and a few, only a few, let out quiet claps. Not applause for justice, relief, like they'd been holding their breath for years. Karen fought until the very end. "This is a mistake. I will ruin all of you. I will ruin him. You can't arrest me in my own community." Dad stopped her mid-rant with nothing but a look. In this county, the community doesn't belong to you. The law does. She spit curses that no one bothered to write down. They guided her into the cruiser and closed the door with a soft thud, like sealing a coffin. The sirens stayed silent. She wasn't worth the noise. The deputies drove away. People stared at the empty spot on the platform like waiting for a ghost to return. No one spoke. No one defended her. They simply stood there, surrounded by banners about integrity and standards. Now, nothing but lies flapping uselessly in the wind. I watched from my truck on the road, out of sight. I didn't need to be seen. This wasn't my victory to claim. She built this. She called the police. She framed the crime. She lit the spotlight. She invited the public. All we did was show up. The county courthouse sat like a stubborn boulder at the edge of town, carved from stone, older than most of the people who lived here. It had none of the dramatic flair of TV legal shows. No echoing marble, no grand staircase, just cold hallways, over-polished floors, and the smell of stale coffee that had been brewed since the Reagan administration. I sat quietly in the back row as Karen's trial began, not because I needed to be there, but because I wanted to see something rare, a person who believed she was the law finally having to answer to it. Karen walked in wearing a beige jail-issue jumpsuit that perfectly matched her personality, expensive taste, downgraded by reality. Even now, she tried to hold her head high, but the weight of the shackles at her ankles betrayed her. She scanned the room like she expected applause, recognition, anything. All she got were tight lips and eyes avoiding hers like she was contagious. The prosecution laid out everything with surgical precision. The false emergency call timed to the exact moment of the attempted break-in, the digital GPS records, video of her handing off stolen jewelry to an accomplice, testimony from 3 HOA members who'd flipped faster than a cheap lawn chair in a windstorm. Her own emails sealed it, drafted threats about forcing compliance and using foreclosure mechanisms to neutralize problematic residents. She didn't sound like a community leader. She sounded like a dictator trying to annex property like land in a war zone. Her defense attorney did his best impression of a drowning man trying to breathe through a straw. He claimed confusion, emotional stress, miscommunication, and a severe misunderstanding of legal boundaries due to administrative overreach. The judge asked him point blank, "Are you arguing your client misunderstood the difference between owning a house and owning the law?" The lawyer stammered something that sounded like no, but hoped for yes. Karen demanded to speak for herself. Against her attorney's wishes, she stood up and declared, "This county is run by nepotism. I was targeted because I tried to uphold order. The sheriff is protecting his son, a man trained for violence who threatened my position and jeopardized property value. I was defending our community." The judge stared at her long enough for everyone to feel secondhand embarrassment. "Mrs. Brockwell, protecting community property does not include impersonating law enforcement power, filing false criminal accusations, staging a burglary, or attempting to seize homes through fraudulent liens. That is not defense. That is tyranny." Her face crumpled, not in sorrow, but disbelief. She genuinely did not understand how she was not the hero here. Even when the judge read the verdict, she kept shaking her head, mouthing no like she was refusing a dinner bill. 7 years. 3 served minimum. The rest on probation under strict monitoring, barred from any governance or property management roles for life. And a hefty restitution bill, $130,000 paid directly to me. Legal fees, damages, and compensation for harassment. The HOA didn't survive the fallout. The county dissolved it under fraud statutes. A court-appointed auditor picked through the ruins, finding misused funds, unexplained purchases, and violations that made even seasoned lawyers blink twice. Residents were left with nothing but relief and oddly quiet lawns, like the neighborhood itself was finally allowed to breathe. My father retired a month after the sentencing. He didn't make an announcement or hold a ceremony. He just walked out of the department one morning, whistling low, leaving behind a generation of officers who treated him like a living roadmap. "Time to let someone else deal with idiots," he said. I knew what he meant. The job wasn't the hard part. The egos were. As for me, I didn't go back to contracting work. Word spread fast that a former Marine, son of a sheriff, whose house survived a miniature legal siege, might know a thing or two about property rights. People asked for advice, quietly at first, then openly. I started charging. Then I made a business out of it, Holden Property Defense Consulting. It sounded fancy, but mostly it involved teaching homeowners how to outsmart crooked HOAs, film evidence correctly, and install the kind of cameras that make lawyers sweat. One spring morning, I bolted a brand new sign onto my gatepost. Fresh metal, clean engraving, private property monitored by dogs, cameras, and the sheriff's son. I stepped back and admired it. It wasn't a warning. It was a reminder. Some people believe order comes from rules. Real order comes from consequences. Karen learned that the hard way, and I was happy to let the mountain quiet resume.